That's my sister's voice in the video, I whispered as my daughter's tears soaked my shoulder. My hand trembled as I watched the screen, 30 parents silently staring at the footage of my daughter being surrounded by a circle of kids. The ringleader, my niece, spoke with cruel precision, her words unmistakably coached by an adult. By my own sister. The school counselor paused the video as I stood up, legs unsteady beneath me. Can you play that part again? I asked, my voice barely audible. I had to be sure. Principal Adams nodded, rewinding to the moment where my 11-year-old Emma was cornered by the lockers. My niece Lily's voice came through clearly. Nobody wants you here. Even your mom works double shifts just to avoid coming home to you. The exact words my sister had said to me during our last argument, when she thought Emma couldn't hear. I looked across the room where my sister, Karen, sat perfectly poised in designer clothes, her husband stone-faced beside her. She met my gaze and something flickered behind her eyes, not shame, but annoyance at being exposed. I think we've seen enough, Karen said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. Kids can be cruel. We'll certainly discipline Lily, but let's not make this bigger than it is. The counselor cleared her throat. Ms. Lewis, would you like to respond? My phone buzzed, Mom calling, probably wondering why I wasn't answering her texts about bringing Emma to Sunday dinner. The same dinner where Karen's family was always featured front and center while Emma and I were seated by the kitchen. I declined the call and placed my phone face down on the table. That wasn't just kids being cruel, I said, my voice gaining strength. Those were words my sister said to me, repeated by her daughter to mine. The room fell silent. Karen's face hardened. That's ridiculous, Samantha. You've always been dramatic. I pulled out my own phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it up. I have more videos. Karen went still, her husband shifting uncomfortably beside her. And that's when Emma slipped her small hand into mine and squeezed, a gesture of courage that broke my heart and fortified it in the same moment. I pressed play. The conference room emptied quickly after I showed the second video. Principal Adams suggested the other parents give us privacy, but Karen and her husband stormed out before they could be dismissed, Lily trailing behind them. Emma, would you mind waiting outside with Ms. Murphy for a minute? Principal Adams asked gently. I'd like to speak with your mom alone. Once Emma left, Principal Adams slid a folder across the table. This isn't the first time we've documented incidents involving Lily and Emma, she said quietly. We suspected adult influence, but couldn't prove it until now. I flipped through the pages. Incident reports dating back months, witness statements, counselor notes. Each one downplayed or dismissed after Karen's involvement. Why wasn't I informed about any of this? My voice shook with anger. Your emergency contact requested we handle these matters through her first, Principal Adams replied, looking uncomfortable. My emergency contact? Your mother, Mrs. Catherine Lewis. I closed the folder, suddenly understanding the missed calls from my mother, the family dinners where Emma was separated from the other kids, the way Emma had grown increasingly quiet after spending weekends with my parents when I worked hospital shifts. My mother knew about this. It wasn't a question. Principal Adams nodded slightly. She assured us she would discuss these incidents with you. And my father? He attended 2 conferences with your mother and sister regarding these situations. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Again. This time, I answered. Samantha, why aren't you answering my texts? Are you still at that school meeting? Karen just called, very upset. She said you're making a scene and embarrassing the family. I pressed the speakerphone button, placing the phone on the table between me and Principal Adams. Did you know, Mom? About what Lily's been doing to Emma. About what Karen's been teaching her to say. A pause. Don't be ridiculous, Samantha. Girls have disagreements. You're blowing this out of proportion as usual. They showed videos, Mom. Lily was repeating Karen's exact words about me. About Emma. The school has documentation going back months that you and Dad helped hide from me. Another pause, longer this time. Your sister has 3 children and a husband. Her standing in the community matters. Emma will be fine. She's always been different. Sensitive like you. Karen's just worried about Lily being around that. The principal's eyes widened. Around what, exactly? I asked, my voice ice cold. You know what I mean. A child without a father, being raised by a single mother working all hours. It's not natural. Karen's just protecting her family. I ended the call without responding and looked at Principal Adams. I'll be withdrawing Emma from the school, effective immediately. She nodded, unsurprised. I understand. For what it's worth, I'm truly sorry this happened. Emma is a wonderful student. I gathered the folder and stood up. I'll need copies of all of these reports for my lawyer. Principal Adams raised an eyebrow. Your lawyer? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. My lawyer. The door opened, and Emma peeked in, her face pale but composed. Miss Murphy stood behind her, a hand on her shoulder. Mom? Can we go home now? Yes, baby. We're going home. But not to the apartment above my parents' garage, where we'd been living since Emma was born. Never there again. The key felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked the door to my parents' house. They wouldn't be home for another hour, plenty of time to pack our essentials and be gone before they returned from their weekly bridge game. Emma followed me silently up the narrow stairs to our apartment, her backpack clutched against her chest like a shield. Just get what you absolutely need for tonight, I instructed, pulling out the suitcases I kept in my closet. We can come back for the rest when they're not here. Emma nodded and disappeared into her room. I heard her dresser drawers opening and closing as I shoved clothes into my own suitcase, not bothering to fold anything. I grabbed my nursing credentials, birth certificates, and the lockbox with our passports and emergency cash. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since we left the school. Calls from my mother, my father, even my brother Mark, who lived in Seattle and rarely involved himself in family drama. I silenced them all. As I packed, my mind raced through options. My friend Teresa had offered her guest room before, knowing things were tense with my family. We could stay there until I found an apartment. My next shift wasn't until Monday, giving us 3 days to figure things out. Mom? Emma stood in my doorway, her suitcase and backpack ready. I got Grandma's good scissors from the kitchen drawer. I frowned. Why did you take those? For this. She held up a small, worn book with a tiny lock, her diary. I need to cut the lock off. The key's gone. I took the scissors and the diary from her, a chill running down my spine. When did you lose the key? Emma looked down. I didn't lose it. Lily took it at Christmas. She said she was just looking, but her voice trailed off. Has anyone in the family mentioned things that were only in your diary? I asked carefully. Emma nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. Grandma said I should be more grateful for everything they do for us. She quoted what I wrote about wanting to live somewhere else. My hands shook as I cut through the small lock, the diary falling open. Several pages had been photographed. I could see the shadow of a phone in some of the pictures. Pages about Emma's feelings on not having a dad, her embarrassment at living above her grandparents' garage, her wish that I could afford dance lessons like Lily had. Private thoughts that had somehow become ammunition. I heard the front door open downstairs. Samantha? Emma? Are you up there? We need to talk. My father's voice, earlier than expected. I froze, looking at Emma's frightened face. Get behind me, I whispered, closing the diary and shoving it into my bag. We're leaving right now. I could hear my father's heavy footsteps on the stairs as we stepped into the hallway, suitcases in hand. What the hell is this? He demanded, blocking our path. Your mother is in tears. Karen's husband is threatening a lawsuit for defamation. Have you lost your mind? I pushed Emma gently behind me. Move, Dad. We're leaving. The hell you are. You live under our roof. You owe us an explanation. I don't owe you anything. You've been helping Karen torment my daughter. His face flushed. Don't be dramatic. Karen's just worried about her kids being influenced by. He gestured vaguely at Emma. This situation? I felt my voice rising. You mean your granddaughter? My daughter? We're not a situation, we're family. Or at least I thought we were. He stepped closer. Your sister has a real family. You have a mistake you refuse to fix. The words hung in the air between us. Behind me, Emma made a small, wounded sound. Something inside me broke and was immediately replaced by something stronger. Get out of my way, I said, my voice deadly calm. Samantha. Now. He must have seen something in my eyes because he stepped aside, watching in silence as we descended the stairs. My mother was in the kitchen, her face tear-streaked and angry. Where do you think you're going? We need to fix this before Karen's husband calls his lawyer. I kept walking. Samantha Elizabeth Lewis, stop right there. I paused at the door, turning to face her. I have copies of everything, the videos, the incident reports, the diary pages your precious Karen photographed. If anyone should be worried about lawyers, it's you. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. We're family. I looked at Emma, who stood straight and tall despite the tears on her face. Yes, we are, I said, taking my daughter's hand. Emma and I are a family. You're just people we used to know. I closed the door on her protests and led Emma to my car, loading our suitcases into the trunk. As I started the engine, I saw my father watching from the front window, my mother frantically dialing her phone beside him. Mom? Emma's voice was small. Where are we going? I reached over and squeezed her hand. Somewhere new. Somewhere better. What about school? What about Grandma and Grandpa? What about Aunt Karen? I pulled away from the curb, not looking back at the house where I'd lived most of my life. We'll figure out school tomorrow. As for the rest of them, I took a deep breath. Sometimes family isn't who you're born to. Sometimes it's who treats you with love and respect. Emma was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window as we drove away from the only home she'd ever known. I wrote something else in my diary, she finally said. Something they didn't find. What's that, baby? I wrote that I wished it could just be us, without them making you sad all the time. My heart twisted in my chest. You notice that? She nodded. I always notice when you're sad, Mom. I blinked back tears, keeping my eyes on the road as I pulled onto the highway. Well, it is just us now. And I'm not sad anymore. Teresa's spare room was small but comfortable, with a double bed we could share until I found us a more permanent situation. She hugged Emma tightly when we arrived, then whispered to me, "Stay as long as you need." No rush. My phone continued to light up with texts and calls. I finally turned it off completely, borrowing Teresa's laptop to send emails to my supervisor explaining I needed emergency personal leave, and to Emma's school requesting all her records be prepared for transfer. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, I sat at Teresa's kitchen table with a glass of wine, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. Want to talk about it? Teresa asked, joining me with her own glass. I sighed. My entire family has been undermining me and emotionally abusing my daughter. My sister was teaching her daughter to bully Emma. My parents were covering it up. They've been making her feel worthless for being born. Teresa's eyes widened. Jesus, Sam. Yeah. I took a long sip of wine. The worst part is, I knew something was wrong. Emma's been withdrawn, having nightmares. I thought it was just normal preteen stuff, or stress from me working so much. I never imagined. You couldn't have known, Teresa said firmly. You trusted your family. That's normal, is it? Because right now, trusting them feels like the biggest mistake of my life. Teresa was quiet for a moment. No, your biggest mistake was letting them make you believe you needed them. You're a registered nurse with a spotless record. You make good money. The only reason you lived with your parents was because they convinced you that you couldn't manage on your own. I stared at her, the truth of her words sinking in. They had convinced me, with subtle comments about the cost of childcare, the dangers of certain neighborhoods, the importance of family support, all while treating Emma as an embarrassment and me as a cautionary tale. "I need to see what else is in Emma's diary," I said suddenly. "I need to know how bad it really was." Teresa nodded. "Do what you need to do." "I'm here." I retrieved the diary from my suitcase and brought it back to the kitchen table. The small lock hung broken from its leather strap, the pages slightly bent from being photographed. For the next hour, I read through Emma's private thoughts, written in her neat handwriting. Tears streamed down my face as I discovered what my daughter had been enduring, Lily and her friends excluding Emma at school, my mother making comments about Emma's clothes and hair compared to her cousins, my father ignoring her questions while enthusiastically engaging with the other grandchildren. And worse, Karen telling Lily that Emma wasn't really part of the family because she didn't have a father, that she and I were charity cases, that proper families stuck together while improper ones fell apart. All of it meticulously documented by an 11-year-old who thought this was normal. Teresa handed me tissues as I cried silently, not wanting to wake Emma. "I'm suing them," I finally said, closing the diary. "All of them." "Are you sure that's what you want?" Teresa asked carefully. "Legal battles can get ugly, especially with family." "They're not my family anymore," I said firmly. "And yes, I'm sure. This isn't just about Emma and me. What if Karen has another niece or nephew someday? What if one of her precious children doesn't meet her standards? They need to face consequences." Teresa nodded slowly. "Okay, my cousin's a family lawyer. I'll call her in the morning." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision, but also a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I was making a choice without considering what my parents or sister would think. "Thank you," I said, squeezing Teresa's hand. "For everything. That's what real family does," she replied simply. 3 days later, Emma and I sat in the office of Patricia Hernandez, Teresa's cousin and a formidable family law attorney. She'd reviewed the videos, the school reports, and the diary, her expression growing increasingly grim. "This is textbook psychological abuse," she said, closing the folder. "The school failed in their mandatory reporting obligations. Your sister and her daughter engaged in targeted harassment. Your parents facilitated and covered it up." She looked at me directly. "You have a very strong case for a restraining order, at minimum. And beyond that?" I asked. "Civil suits for emotional distress, potentially criminal charges for the more serious incidents." She turned to Emma, her tone gentler. "But that would mean testimony, possibly multiple court appearances. Are you prepared for that, Emma?" Emma, who had been quiet throughout most of the meeting, looked up from the fidget toy Patricia had given her. "Will I have to see them?" she asked. "Eventually, yes," Patricia admitted. "But I'd be with you the whole time, and so would your mom." Emma was silent for a moment, then opened her backpack and pulled out a notebook, not her diary, but a composition book I hadn't seen before. "I kept this at school," she explained, handing it to Patricia. "Ms. Murphy helped me. It has dates and times and exactly what happened. She said it might be important someday." Patricia's eyebrows shot up as she flipped through the notebook, page after page of detailed incidents, some with stapled witness statements from other kids, some with notes from Ms. Murphy herself. "Emma," Patricia said slowly, "this is incredibly helpful. Did your teacher know you were keeping this record?" Emma nodded. "She gave me the notebook after she found me crying in the bathroom. She said sometimes adults don't believe kids unless there's proof." My heart broke all over again. While I'd been working double shifts to pay rent to my parents and save for our future, my daughter had been building a case, with the help of a teacher who saw what I hadn't. "Well," Patricia said, looking impressed, "with this evidence and Ms. Murphy's potential testimony, we have options." She turned to me. "The question is, what do you want, Samantha? A restraining order? Financial compensation? Criminal charges?" I looked at Emma, who met my gaze steadily. "What do you want, baby? This is your life too." Emma thought for a moment, her face serious beyond her years. I want them to never do this to anyone else, she said finally. And I want to live somewhere where no one makes you cry. I nodded, turning back to Patricia. We want accountability, protection, and independence. Whatever combination of legal actions gets us that. Patricia made some notes. We'll start with a restraining order against your sister and her family, then move to severing your financial entanglements with your parents. The emotional abuse case will take longer, but this evidence is compelling. She smiled at Emma. You're very brave, you know that? Emma shrugged, but I could see a small, proud smile forming. My mom's braver. We're both brave, I said, pulling her close. We're going to be okay. As we left Patricia's office, my phone, which I'd finally turned back on, buzzed with a text. Not from my parents or sister, but from my brother Mark in Seattle. Just heard from Mom. Don't know what happened, but knowing Karen, you probably had good reasons. Call me if you need anything. Mean it. Asterisk. I showed Emma the message. Does that mean Uncle Mark is still our family? She asked. I tucked the phone away, considering. Maybe. We'll see. For now, it's just you and me against the world. Is that okay? Emma slipped her hand into mine, squeezing gently. It's more than okay, Mom. It's perfect. The restraining order was granted 2 weeks later. My parents, predictably, sided with Karen, threatening to cut me out of the will and demanding repayment for years of supporting me and Emma. My lawyer laughed when I showed her the text. They can try, she said. But the courts tend to frown on financial retaliation against victims seeking protection. I found us an apartment near the hospital where I worked, and Emma started at a new school where nobody knew us and nobody called her the charity case. Ms. Murphy sent a care package with a new diary, this one with a proper lock and 2 keys. My brother Mark called from Seattle, listening in silence as I explained what had happened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I believe you, he finally said. Karen was always Mom's favorite, and Dad just went along with whatever kept the peace. I'm sorry I wasn't around more. You have your own life, I said, surprised by his support. Your own family. Yeah, well, you and Emma are family too. He cleared his throat. Melissa and I were talking. There's a nursing shortage at her hospital, and the school district here is excellent. If you two wanted a fresh start somewhere far away from all this. I looked through the doorway to where Emma sat at our new dining table, happily working on homework without constantly looking over her shoulder, without hiding her diary, without fearing ridicule or whispers. We'll think about it, I promised. Right now, we're just taking it one day at a time. After we hung up, I joined Emma at the table, helping her with math problems until it was time for dinner. As we ate the pasta we'd cooked together in our own kitchen, Emma looked up at me. Mom? Are you still sad about Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Karen? I considered the question carefully. I'm sad about who I thought they were and who they turned out to be. But I'm not sad about our life now. Are you? She shook her head. I like it better when it's just us. No one makes fun of my clothes or says mean things about you behind your back. No one ever will again, I promised. Not if I can help it. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on our small balcony, looking at the city lights and thinking about family, the one we're born into and the one we choose. About the strength it takes to walk away and the courage it takes to start over. My phone buzzed with a text from Teresa, checking in. Then another from Mark, sending a link to a rental listing in Seattle. Then Ms. Murphy, reporting that Emma's old classmates had made her a care package. Family, I was learning, didn't have to share your blood to share your heart. I looked back through the window at my sleeping daughter, peaceful for the first time in months. Walking away from my parents and sister had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, but staying would have cost Emma her sense of worth, her trust in me, her childhood. Some prices are too high, even for family. Especially for family. Was I right to cut off my family completely, or should I have tried to work things out for Emma's sake? What would you have done in my place?